Yes, what's up? Welcome in. It's Foxboro Rush. I'm George Balekji. He's Travis Thomas. We got a jam-packed show for you guys today. As always, joining us on the last episode of the week, we'll have Michael Lombardi chiming in. He'll give us a glimpse into what's going down in Foxboro, as always, bringing that great perspective.
Yep.
We also have Connor Rogers of SNY joining us to break down. There is a matchup Sunday to break down the Jets and the Patriots teaming up and playing each other Sunday at 1 p.m. And then we'll end with some outlooks of the future of Jerod Mayo and Robert Kraft. But let's bring him in. He's Michael Lombardi. You can catch him on the GM Shuffle. You can catch him on Coach. You can catch him on VSiN. Michael, it's gonna be a fun one today, man. It's been a very active week for the Patriots, to say the least.
Well, they stirred the fire. I mean, look, let's face it. It's a self-inflicted wound. I mean, it's bad enough to be 1-6, but then when you call your team soft, it's just really not, you have no one to blame but yourself. And so you're going to have to do damage control from this point forward.
Yeah, let's start there. I mean, the Patriots have been a mess. I mean, the coach calls them soft, walks it back. They've lost 6 in a row. The wide receivers are asking for trades on Instagram and in touchdown celebrations. But when you're watching what's going on in Foxboro, what do you see unraveling right now?
Well, you see disorganization. You see a lot of disconnection. You don't see the same. You don't see a team. Here's the most important thing that you have to be able to do. You don't see a team improving every week. They started out in the summer. They looked horrible. No one saw their ability to beat the Cincinnati Bengals in the opener, and they did. And they actually looked better. They blocked better. They really look like they've improved. And then since then, we haven't seen any improvement whatsoever. In fact, we've seen a defense that has gone backwards, and we see a defense that has struggled to cover run or pass. And so to me, that's what you want as a head coach. You want to try to look. No one's saying that when Mayo took the job, he had to win the Super Bowl. But what you are saying is we want to get better. They gave up 13 first downs in the opening game. And now last week they gave up 23 first downs to a bad Jacksonville team. That's not improving. And so I think what you want is improvement. You want improvement, and you want somebody who's on top of things. And, Mayo has promoted himself as a delegator. And I said this on my podcast. If he didn't come out at halftime, would anybody notice? Like, at some point, you got to coach the team, right? You can't just critique the team. You got to coach the team. And I wrote this I write the daily. We have a daily coach with the great George Raveling, and everybody writes every week. And I think one of the biggest issues really is when you saw Joe Mazzulla kiss the parquet floor and really honor those who came before him, and really was unbelievably thankful for the 17 other titles that this Celtic team has won in the most in NBA history. Yep. They embrace the past, but all we've seen out of the Patriots is to disassociate themselves with the past. They want to take credit for the past. They want to talk about the greatest coach of all time as if he's never coached a game before. And I think that affects your culture. I think that affects your culture. You can't move forward if you're constantly looking back, destroying the people, whether it's the documentary, whether it's I didn't trust Bill. I gave him too much authority by Robert Kraft. That's in the past. Robert Kraft has every right to fire Bill, to make a decision, hire a new coach. No one's debating that. But move forward, embrace the 6 titles, and let Mayo start. But here's what I do know, guys. I know this from experience. When we fired Marty Schottenheimer in Cleveland in 1988, after he lost to a playoff game, because there were such expectations, we lost a wild card game to the Houston Oilers. Art Modell fired Marty Schottenheimer. Man won 200 career games. He's on 9th on the all-time list of wins. And we hired Bud Carson because the idea was he could stop John Elway, and John Elway was a thorn in our side. Well, Marty was detailed. Marty was on top of everything. There was nothing he was a great coach. Bud wasn't. And so our program got worse with every week. Now, we ended up going to the conference championship game that year, but by the next year, Bud got fired because the team was a disaster. So my point here is when you go the opposite of what you think you should hire, go from Belichick, who's on top of every detail, to Mayo, who's letting the coaches coach, you're going to ask for some trouble, and there's going to be a lot of growing pains.
I want to piggyback off that and use a word that you used with the culture, because on the coaches podcast that you do, you mentioned the Patriots are a kinder and gentler program. Can you please explain that? Because it sounds like it has to do with the Mayo culture.
Those are my words. No, those are Elliot. Those are Elliot Wolf's words. One thing when you work for Coach Belichick, everybody's under pressure to perform, whether you're in the scouting department, whether you're on the coaching staff, whether you're on the player. Everybody has a standard to raise their game to. Mm-hmm. And if you're not raising your level to the standard that has been set by him, right, then everybody is going to be in trouble, right? It's not just the players, it's the players, coaches, staff, everybody. You've never heard Belichick go to a press conference say, well, the players played poor, but we coach great. Of course he never said that, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody has a standard of excellence that they have to get to. And if you don't get there, then you're going to be. And so when you come in and say, well, we want it to go easier on the players. We want to be, let the players breathe a little bit. Well, look, I've been around football my whole life. I've never seen that breathing and relaxed atmosphere work. We're talking about a highly competitive field. We're talking about really tough. The great teams, you look at all the championship teams, they have attention to detail and they have discipline. And most importantly, they have accountability, which is really responsibility, right? There's a difference between accountability and responsibility. Mm-hmm. Responsibility means you do it because it's ingrained in your system. Like for me, for example, I live in this house. If I see a picture that isn't straight because it's gotten crooked, because Bill Walsh was obsessed with making sure every picture in the facility was aligned. If I don't fix the picture, I've lost my responsibility. If Walsh had to go tell me to go straighten the picture out, that's accountability. See, that's the difference in leadership. And Mayo sells himself off as this great leader. And I have not seen any leadership that I would say, boy, that's something that's really good.
Yeah, we see when Bill Belichick comes out and he would always talk about, if the players are playing soft, that's on me. That's a coach. I'm taking accountability. Yep. We've seen Tom Brady, Devin McCourty, Ty Law speak publicly asking for more. Again, that word used, accountability. Do you think we'll see that from Jerod Mayo? Because he also came out and said it's still DeMarcus's defense, but DeMarcus Covington, to his credit, speaking to the media on Thursday, said the run defense hasn't been good, and that's on me. But do you think we'll see less delegation and more hands-on responsibility and accountability from Jerod Mayo?
This is the hardest lesson for any young coach to learn. There's only two people in the organization that winning matters to. Everybody else, it doesn't, right? Let me give you an example. Mm-hmm. If Alex Van Pelt was coaching Drake May, and Drake May was the best rookie quarterback, and he was having one hell of a year, and they only won 2 games, Alex Van Pelt would get a job tomorrow being an offense coordinator.
Yep.
Nothing to do with winning. Winning is irrelevant for Alex Van Pelt. It's irrelevant for Covington. Now, they want to do a good job and win, but if their numbers are good and they're having a great year, they'll get another job. But you're the head coach. You're in charge of winning. You're the general manager. Your job is on the line to win. There's only 2 people in the company that the owner is evaluating on wins. Everybody else, they're not. And so to me, when you just say, well, it's the Covington's defense, well, what did I hire you for? What is your job? Mm-hmm. You should go over and help fix the defense. But see, Mayo doesn't have enough experience to go do that. That's the problem. And so how does he fix the defense? You can't – look, I think to me, I'm a huge Sopranos fan. And if you watch the David Chase documentary, every single word that was ever said on The Sopranos, David Chase controlled. Every detail he controlled. Because why? It was his baby. It was so important to him. He wanted it perfect. Mm-hmm. That's leadership. That's not micromanaging. That's leadership. It's so important we're leading. But when you say, well, I'm going to decentralize, I'm going to give it to this guy, you're not leading. You're passing the buck.
Yeah. Look, we're big Sopranos fans too, Michael. So I want to ask you this. If this guy, Jerod Mayo, gets this 1 win, or let's call it 2 wins here. I mean, I know he was handpicked by Robert Kraft, but I've been saying I think he gets whacked. It doesn't matter because in this league, 1 or 2 wins, that's what happens. You get whacked. Gut feeling from you. If they win 2 wins, just for the sake of this conversation, Michael, do you believe Jerod Mayo is fired as a head coach?
No, I don't, because they're going to say I inherited a bad team. Although they ignore that Washington was a worse team than New England last year, and that Washington's winning. So they have a built-in excuse. They've already built an excuse. I don't think Robert's going to admit he made a mistake. Look, the last time they played the Jets, he proudly announced to the world that he handpicked Mayo 7 years ago, that he knew he was going to be a great coach. Look, I've said this many times on my podcast. I've said it to Robert Kraft's face. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. He belongs in the Hall of Fame because he made a Hall of Fame decision to hire the greatest coach of all time when everybody told him not to do it. Everybody in the league said, don't hire Bill Belichick. It won't work. And he won 6 Super Bowls doing something that nobody else does. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for that decision alone. For that decision, that's what owners are in charge of. The franchise. You made a franchise decision. And he belongs in the Hall of Fame for that, just like Eddie DeBarlo belongs in the Hall of Fame for hiring Bill Walsh. Nothing else that he did mattered. He hired Bill Walsh. He won titles. So for me, I don't see Robert giving up on this easy, because he's put his neck out there saying that, hey, look, I saw greatness in Mayo. I saw it 7 years ago.
When you talk about, and you bring it up, that you don't see him doing it, and that's the only reason I can see Jerod Mayo making it past this season if it continues at this pace. But do you see Robert Kraft admitting that he was wrong with the hires he made or the promotions he made? You could put it that way too, of Jerod Mayo to head coach and Ellie Wolf fully taking on this front office, where we've seen this team get worse from last season, and they only won 4 games last season.
Well, look, they were in 4 games last year. They lost. They were in 8 games. They lost by 1 score. Chad Rylands made 2 kicks for the Arizona Cardinals that he never made for the Patriots. Had he made a few kicks for the Patriots, there might have been, instead of having 4 wins, they might have had 6 wins. So, look, that's the bounce of the ball. I get it, and certainly they were not good last year. I'm not defending last year at all, but I do know this. I know that it's tough for owners to admit they made a mistake. They have the ball. They have the pen last. They can do it. Now, if the fans start having this, if all the media outlets are coming against them, because, look, nobody had a better offseason than Mayo did. He was kinder. He was gentler. He was easy to talk to. He wasn't Bill. Everything was popular. We loved Mayo, all that. Well, just sit back and watch the games. See how much you love it.
Yeah, it's an S show. How's that sound? Michael, if you're in the building, what changes are you trying to make now? I mean, a lot of things feel too late. You and I have talked about this before, about the offensive line. It's too late. That was a blind spot in the offseason. But right now, is there anything that can be done, sweeping changes that can be made in the building to help this out, to stop the bleeding, Michael?
No, you got to get Mayo to coach the team. You got to get Mayo to be more demanding on the assistant coaches. Look, Bill Walsh said this all the time to me. He said, when the assistant coaches are happy, we're not winning. Somebody's got to drive the coaches. Somebody's got to push the players. Look, we got to go. We got to get going. But when you sell your whole program around riding bikes in the locker room, being kinder and gentler, how do you turn it back on? It's like the same thing we do with our kids. It's the same thing we do with our children. If we let them get away with it and we don't parent, then they're going to keep doing it. There's an old saying in coaching, you're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. And once you've allowed it to happen, it's hard to change, because now the players say, well, now you become a jerk. This isn't the way it was this summer.
Yeah. Do you see a win left on the schedule for them, Michael? It's an honest question. It's tough to find one.
I think, could they beat Arizona? I think that maybe. Tennessee next week in Tennessee, that's one. But after that, I don't see one. Maybe Indianapolis, because Indy can't play run defense. But, I think if they could get the Chargers, they have the Chargers at home in cold weather. Maybe the Chargers a little too, like when Arizona went to Green Bay, you knew they were going to lose. They were so scared of the cold.
Right.
That would be the only one. I mean, they're not. Look, they're going to have the first. They're going to either them or Carolina are going to have the first pick in the draft.
Yeah, and we'll see what they do at that point. They need a left tackle, but they need a lot more
trade back
on this roster. Wouldn't hate it. He's Michael Lombardi, host of the GM Shuffle. Catch him on Coach. Catch him every morning on VSiN. You could catch him every Friday here on Foxboro Rush. Michael, appreciate you taking the time as always,
my friend. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Man,
a lot to unpack there, George. Woo! He went in on. Hey, listen, I'm gonna keep it real, George. We go in on Jerod Mayo too.
Yeah.
And we argue about, will he be here? Won't he be here in the future? But nobody, and I do mean nobody, goes in on Jerod Mayo like Michael Lombardi. George, I asked, what can you do to stop the bleeding? There's got to be something you could do in the building. And this man says, yeah, Mayo can coach.
You know what? I mean, it's what you have to see. Woo! It's the same thing of when you go back. I'm just going to use solely the Dolphins game.
Yeah.
Where that game was lost because of coaching. That team was tough up to a point.
Yes.
They were running the ball, 8 yards a carry.
Yes.
They were stopping the run until that defense was gassed at the end of the game because they were on the field the entire time.
Right.
But even before you get to that point, When Alex Van Pelt refused to run the ball time and time again and kept putting it in Jacoby Brissett's hands, that's when Jerod Mayo has to flip the switch on his headset, get an AVP's ear and go, what the F are you doing? Run the effing ball.
Yep.
That should be the 3 sweetest words for any offensive player in football outside of a wide receiver.
Facts.
Run the effing ball.
Facts.
Okay, it's 4 words, but you get my point.
Yeah.
Like that's when, so it does make sense. That Dolphins game was lost because of coaching. The Texans game was, there was the icing on the cake, Drake May in his debut. But the Jaguars game, same thing. And it keeps coming up of what changes of philosophy has to be made. And Jerod Mayo says the same thing of, it has to be playing sound football. You're playing sound football. Like, you know me, I love NFL Pro. I get that all 22, sideline end zone footage. I go always to my Drake May, then I'm going to the defense. It wasn't a lack of playing hard because the defense was showing up. They were just getting outplayed.
That's right.
So they were playing tough, but they can only do so much. There's no Christian Barmore. There's no Juwan Bentley. There's no Jabril Peppers. Those are huge vacancies on that defense. But that's when, to the point, how bad this run defense has been, because running the ball has been their weakness the last 2 weeks. But this run defense has been atrocious going back to the Jets game. And that's the defense. And Jerod Mayo is a defensive-minded head coach. I understand letting DeMarcus Covington learn on the fly, baptism by the fire, be a defensive coordinator. But you know what a great head coach does, Trav?
What?
They know their weaknesses. They know their deficiencies. Hey, I'm not an offensive guy.
Yeah.
TC McCartney, AVP, Ben McAdoo. Ben McAdoo, who's been an OC, who's been a head coach. You take care of that. I'm going to go help out DeMarcus Covington.
Yeah.
And a head coach knows, a good leader knows when to let your people do their thing.
Yep.
And then when to go in, step in, and help them get to that goal. And we're yet to see that from Jerod Mayo.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I know we got to move on, but another thing I noticed in that interview, I mean, if you were playing a drinking game, to how many times Michael Lombardi made that kinder, gentler Patriots program reference, you'd be wasted. Because I brought it up, but he said it after that question, George, 3 or 4 times in that interview. He's really hammering it home. Not a big fan of Jerod Mayo is Michael Lombardi, George, clearly.
You know, I think it's more the criticism of Robert Kraft. And I think Jerod Mayo in this one is an innocent bystander in a way.
Yep.
Like, Jerod didn't ask to be handpicked as a successor. And Jerod didn't ask for Bill to be fired before the timeline, earlier than the timeline expected, right? It was baked into his contract when he was brought back as DC to be the succeeding head coach because he wanted those opportunities.
Yeah.
He interviewed for the Denver Broncos job. Obviously, Jerod Mayo, Robert Kraft, and Bill Belichick. Obviously, Bill Belichick, he didn't want to win 4 games his last season. That wasn't the plan. It was him to break the record, then retire. And you know what? In a way, again, in Robert Kraft's perfect world, hey, Bill, while you're breaking the record, you're getting ready, let's get Jerod to be the head coach. Everything went faster than it was supposed to be because the team hit rock bottom really quickly. But when I hear these messages and this wording from Bill Belichick, it's him going at Robert Kraft. Because when he's talking about how bad the run defense is played, and when he's pointing out that, you know, if I was a head coach, I would take full accountability and I wouldn't call my team soft. What he's saying is that's the head coach's fault. And what he's looking at for people to be smarter and go, who picked that head coach?
That's right.
And that, I think that's what it comes back to. So Lombardi, he comes on, he's gracious with his time. We could ask him about the relationship with Jerod Mayo. Yeah. I think this is all pointed at Robert Kraft because he also did bring up the article that he wrote, that documentary. Who wrote that documentary trying to do revisionist history?
That's right.
Oh, it was me. Keeping Bill and Tom together for a longer time.
Yep.
And Lombardi gave Robert Kraft credit. He hired Bill Belichick when people said not to. But if Robert Kraft's going to try and take credit of drafting Tom Brady, if Tom Brady, was expected to be, and people expected him to do that, you wouldn't wait until that late in the draft to take him.
That's right.
That is a second, third round pick. That's a first round pick if you think he's going to be that.
Yeah.
So there's so much in this. I think in this one, Jerod Mayo has been catching strays. Now,
he's earned them.
Is he innocent? Exactly. He's not innocent.
He's earned them.
His hands are dirty in this too.
Yeah, he's earned them.
And that is, to Lombardi's point too, of the details, right? The details.
Right.
A coach that's on the details, you don't talk through the media. You want something said to me or your teammates, you talk to me. Well, that's obviously been happening since training camp with Devon Godchaux and Matt Judon, now the receivers.
Yeah.
And when that stuff happens, it's cleaned up. the details, it keeps going with these receivers. After Jalen Polk does what he does, KJ Osborne, there's no excuse. He's a vet. He's been in the league. The details. Ramondre Stevenson doesn't fumble 4 straight weeks before getting benched for 3 plays. Details.
Bro.
So Jerod Mayo's not without it, and this team has regressed, but this roster is very flawed right now.
I'm not going to lie, bro. You even bringing up the wide receivers demanding anything. And I know it's happening. I know it's a reality. But just hearing you even say that out loud triggers me. Like, who do these guys, like, who are you to demand anything?
Yeah.
What have any of you done besides absolutely nothing to demand anything? And you know what's interesting too, George? The most productive wide receiver in this group is the most professional. Just quiet, goes about his business. He's not a pain in the ass. Pop Douglas.
And
all the rest
Henry.
of these guys, I mean, they're doing nothing and demanding all this stuff and acting like divas. For what? Usually, with diva wide receivers throughout history that we've seen, they are your best players many times.
Yeah, like the personality is worth it. The headaches are worth it.
Yes.
Because he's a Terrell Owens. Or he could be a Justin Jefferson who's not that much of a diva. A Devontae Adams.
Yes.
A Stephon Diggs.
Thank you. I mean,
these guys, I don't even know if they're a wide receiver 4 on most rosters outside of Pop.
Facts.
And Kendrick Bourne.
Right.
That's the issue.
And those, like, Pop's quiet and just goes about his business. It's unbelievable.
We'll see. Hey, the Patriots play the Jets this Sunday. You know that?
I do. Can't wait.
Almost forget that they're playing an opponent this week
I
because
know.
of everything. Again, we're not even talking about Drake May's performance or the team's play on the field for the most part. It's a soft comments. It's what's happening on the outside. But let's bring him in. He's my boy, Connor Rogers, SNY, the best person to talk Jets with. Let's bring him in right now. He's Connor Rogers of SNY every Jets game day. Catch him on pre and post game. Also, always catch him on Matthew Berry's Fantasy Football Happy Hour every day of the week as well. Connor, appreciate you taking the time, man. How we doing?
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Feels like Jets-Patriots week. This is our time to catch up or commiserate, whatever it may be.
And that's what it's at now. I mean, the Patriots are 1-6. The Jets are 2-5. Have you seen any improvement for this Jets team since firing Robert Saleh, demoting Nathaniel Hackett, promoting Todd Downing to play calling, and, of course, Jeff Ulbrich taking over as a play caller?
So Downing's been a clear upgrade over Hackett. That bar was really low, specifically against the Bills, where it's crazy, but if they make their 2 field goals, they win. They win the game, and they're in first place somehow in the AFC East going into the Steelers game. Downing was really good in that game. It was their highest rate of motion of the season. It was their highest rate of play action of the season. He threw a lot of misdirection, a lot of different looks at the Bills that really had them on their heels. But at the end of the day, you don't make your kicks. You don't convert your red zone appearances to touchdowns. That's going to be the difference in the game. And that's been a big problem for the Jets this year. They lost the Broncos by not making a field goal at the end of the game. That's part of football. If you don't have good special teams, you deserve to lose games. So Downing has been a clear upgrade, and that was something it was rumored that Saleh wanted to do anyway before he was fired. So that bar was really low. Now, the defense, to me, the same problems exist because it's a personnel issue for the large part. They can't stop the run up front. It felt like they had started to turn the corner after they were terrible against San Francisco week 1. They were not good against the first half against Tennessee. They had a really strong second half against Tennessee. They walloped New England on Thursday Night Football, and everybody looked around like, okay, they're cleaning up a lot of things. The offense looks better. And then everything kind of fell apart where they couldn't get anything going against the Broncos. They didn't stop the run against the Steelers at all in that game. And at the end of the day, a lot of the Jets' problems remain the same. They worried they had an energy problem with Saleh, but that really hasn't improved since they got rid of him. At some point, it's on the guys in the locker room to improve that. So not much has changed, to be honest with you. And there's not any more help coming on the way. I know Hassan Reddick is making his way back, but outside of that, this is the situation they're in.
Connor, I'm a big fan of the name Connor. I like Connor McGregor. I like Connor McDavid. But when it comes to your last name, thank God you're not related to Aaron Rodgers. Because let me tell you something, Connor, there is no bigger hater, none, than Aaron Rodgers than me, my friend. I can't stand him, and he stinks. Now, here's my question to you. Rodgers in New York. This is just what I wrote down in terms of job duties. GM, head coach, QB1, finger-pointing, blaming GOAT. I mean, how is he with the New York media is my question. How does he handle you guys? How do you guys handle him? Because he's got all these other gigs covered, clearly.
I consider myself pretty fortunate that I don't find myself in the scrums because my day job in NBC keeps me there up in Stamford, Connecticut, and then my Jets job keeps me in our lovely studio. But we have our reporters on the ground that, you heard him say it last week. Number one thing, stop listening to you guys. And he looks at the reporters, and I don't think that's the number one thing right now for the Jets. I watched the tape. They have a lot more problems than listening to what the media's concerns are about them. So this is the situation with Rodgers is you can act that way when you're the MVP of the league. You could even act that way when you're a top 12-ish quarterback on a franchise that's been desperate for one forever. The problem is coming off an Achilles, he looks 40 years old. He looks 45 years old, to be honest with you. He looks like a guy approaching 50. The body's banged up, not taking the hits the same. I think the arm is everything it's always been, but this is somebody that has lost a step of that playmaking ability. Really, the best version of it we saw was that Thursday night game against New England where they lost contain against him way too many times. After that, he's taken a lot of hits. He took a lot of hits against Minnesota. He's got 3 different little injuries right now where you got to look in the mirror and say, and to be fair, he did say, it starts with me, I need to play better. But then there's always 5 things after that. And the reality is with the Jets, it starts there where they got to start scoring touchdowns. They got to put the opposition on their heels where their defense can play the way they want to play. Once again, we really only saw that against New England, to be honest with you guys, and that's not good enough. New England's a rebuilding team in this league. That's not a win that you pound your chest and say everything's right, because then everything wasn't right when you lose to the Broncos of the world, the Steelers of the world, and everything is just kind of spiraling right now.
Yeah, I love that you point out, we keep bringing up the Thursday night because walking away from that game, I said, all right, well, the Patriots got their butts kicked, but that is an Aaron Rodgers that looks vintage, was playing like a top 3 passer in the league, diced him up. You know what? It was their day. It wasn't. The energy concerned me, nothing else. We look back on that Thursday night game now, Connor, and I think that's a reflection of just how bad the Patriots were, that the Jets looked that good against them. But do you see right now this team that the excitement around Davante Adams now in New York? And I wasn't someone that picked them to beat the Steelers, but I said, hey, he helps out a struggling offensive line to get the ball out quicker. There's a trickle-down effect to help out the offense. But is it getting to the point where, all right, look, Rodgers isn't going to rescue you guys. Davante Adams isn't going to rescue you guys. The answers aren't on the roster. It's not on the coaching staff. It's just watching this Jets team. Do you see them being redeemable to the point where they can be respectful, or do you think this is a team that it is?
It's all there on paper, but until you actually see it, it means nothing. I mean, that's just the reality of it right now. And you can't, try to be the NBA with an NFL team. And it feels like the Jets have a little bit of that syndrome. This concerned me at the end of last year. While they were scrappy with getting nothing from the quarterback position, the defense played very tough. They had some skill players that made plays in Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. They were a scrappy 7-win team with nothing at quarterback. But I thought they fell into the trap of when the quarterback's right, everything's going to be okay. And you lose sight of what you're supposed to do, right? They're not responsible against the run. They lost a lot of pieces up front on this defensive line that they didn't do a good enough job replacing. And then you get hit with a couple injuries on the back end and everything falls apart. That's not how it's supposed to be. You could look like a different team without DJ Reed and Michael Carter and Chuck Clark, but you still need to be able to hold the fort at some point. So I think they're a team that fell into the savior trap with Rodgers, where they thought he can uplift them above all of their other problems, and that just hasn't been the case. Now, can they do it? If you want the glass half full, right, which I'm sure the Jets do right now, one, the schedule falls off a cliff. It does. It's not, I'm not going to say they're playing, Jacksonville or the Panthers every week, but they get New England again, which you have to win. If you don't, the season's easily over. We know that much. To Texans on a short week, okay, that's tough, but the Texans haven't been amazing this year. They've been just good. And then you get a lot of matchups, whether it's Jacksonville. We'll see where Miami's season is at. Obviously, the Cardinals haven't really been great this year. The schedule is a lot different than how they started their year. That it's your chance to get hot. But the Jets are they're in playoff football mode now. It's like never where you want to be before Halloween, where it's, our backs are against the wall. We probably got to win, I don't know, at least like 8 to 10 is what it looks like right now for them. And that's just a difficult spot to be in. And they haven't shown that they can get in rhythm like that yet.
It is a difficult spot to be in, but with a great leader at quarterback, you'd have a chance. But unfortunately for the Jets, they don't have that. Connor, here's my question. I want to go backwards because George alluded to this, and he was right. He picked the Steelers in that game. I picked the Jets. Neither one of us saw a beatdown, and that's exactly what we got. What the hell happened in that game, A? B, what are the Jets going to be trying to improve from that game that we'll see translate in the Patriots game?
So it's so different, right? Because of the way they play, that the number one thing is the self-inflicted wounds. That's what they need to improve on. They're winning 15-6. There is 1 minute and 23 seconds left of the half. They have the ball at the 35-yard line. It's 2nd and 4. He throws that post to Garrett Wilson that's picked off with 2 high safeties, and the slot corner is underneath it, where Breece Hall is running underneath Devontae and Garrett clearing out the coverage. It's 2nd and 4. If you throw the ball to Breece Hall, and he's probably going to make somebody miss and run for a long time, but if he doesn't, it's at worst a first down with some timeouts in your pocket and a chance to kick a field goal before the half to go up 18-6 into the half. And the Steelers are not I don't even care what people say about Russell Wilson right now. They're not a team that's going to bury themselves out of 2-score leads very often.
Right.
So that was number 1. That's a self-inflicted wound that can't happen against New England, or problems will spire. Number 2, while this is a little different against New England because they don't have a guy like this right now, the way the Jets treated George Pickens is insane to me. It's 2nd and 17. You have your backup corner, Brandon Echols, on an island with Pickens. Sauce Gardner is on the other side with no one to cover. And they don't give him any help on a 2nd and 17. They have no pass rush because Will McDonald's doubled. Their only good pass rusher, and everybody else does nothing. So that's a situation to me that, number 1, yeah, it'll help to have DJ Reed and Michael Carter back. Number 2, Sauce has got to travel with number 1s. I don't see New England as a team that has a number 1 that you want to staple him to anyway. But giving the Steelers that moonball shot on 2nd and 17, which he caught, by the way, it looked like a basketball player just grabbing a rebound for 40, 50 yards, whatever it was. That's bad coaching. That's bad scheme. And that's just overall bad football awareness, situational football. So that's not translatable to this game because is Drake May going to drop back and just start chucking it up in the air? Maybe he will, but the reality is I don't know if the Patriots want Drake May to be playing that way in this game, but the self-inflicted wounds against a Patriots defense that can be scrappy, that's something that the Jets need to change, or they'll find themselves with short field situations against Patriots offense.
Hey, I won't completely rule out Drake May dropping back and slinging it because he did do that against the Texans.
Yeah.
And he was taking licks, but 246 yards and 3 touchdowns. Following week, 270 plus yards, 2 touchdowns. Their best recipe for success is something I didn't want to happen, Connor. I don't want him throwing the ball 35 times a game. I want 25 because I don't want him taking hits. But more importantly, this is the Patriots defense. You mentioned scrappy. They're allowing 145 rushing yards per game to running backs their last 5 games. Their secondary has been exploited. But is this a Jets team that can run the ball? Because they have the talent in Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, but we haven't seen the run game be there for them.
They got it going against the Bills, where the Bills didn't really have an answer, and then it reverted back to its bad ways against the Steelers. So it's really flipping a coin at this point. I know Keon White missed the first practice of the week. I haven't kept up with the injury status. If New England is thin up front, the Jets are going to try to run Breece and Braylon Allen right at them and take the game completely out of Rodgers' hands, where you could limit him not only the turnover potential, but really getting hit is the issue there as well. So that's a really interesting way it's going to come out and see how they respond, because the Jets need to be throw heavy in the beginning to get a lead, and then you could try to wear them out with the run. So it's been hot and cold, to be honest with you. We've seen the best of Breece Hall. We've seen the worst of Breece Hall. The Steelers game is a little misleading because, yes, the Steelers stopped the run, but Breece Hall had almost 100 receiving yards in the first half of the game on throws that any of us could make. So I know we fall into the run defense stats, but those dump-offs to me are an extension of the run. If your linebackers can't come to balance and tackle, that's really bad run defense just in the pass game. So I wonder if they try to exploit New England's defense that way, where, listen, we're going to dump the ball off to Breece. You could either tackle him or you can't. I know that that's something they've struggled with in the past against him, and it'll be really interesting to see how they kind of try to take him out of this game.
Great you bring up Keon White. He did return to practice, as did Anthony Jennings, who's their best run-stopping linebacker as well. You mentioned the pass rush. All you have is Will McDonald. The Hassan Reddick era debacle, whatever you want to call it. He's with the team now. What is the expectations from him? This will be his first game after full practice with the Jets.
I think he's going to get 10 or 12 pass rush snaps in this game. I think he'll be active and ready to roll, and they've had no one do anything across from Will McDonald all year. Will McDonald has 8 sacks, and everyone else has been quiet. And with Reddick, it's going to be can we get the young quarterback into 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 8s, throw Reddick on the field, they do 2 wide 9 rushers, and say, whoever's out at tackle for New England this week, you probably going to get him on an island and give him your best and make the quarterback either make a bad decision or take a sack. And is that going to be very effective? That's really early for Reddick to be making an impact. Football shape is so different from just working out at home. But it's one of many problems for the Jets is they have no number 2 rusher to create havoc, and they're hoping that they can get that from him. It's weird. I feel like it's dangerous to bet against Reddick because he has so many sack incentives on this new contract that he'll be out there going for it. Like effort won't be an issue, but at the end of the day, it just feels like this might not be the game for that.
Same question for Davante Adams. I mean, we're talking game number 2 with him now, and I've seen clips of him, and I actually have liked some of the sound bites I've heard from him.
Yeah.
He's trying to take a leadership role here. He's saying, at this point in my career, I just want to win. It's a lot of heartfelt pump-up speeches from Davante Adams, and that's not something I'm used to seeing, but I like it. Sort of your take, your opinion of what we can expect to see from him in this game, just game number 2 with the Jets.
So from a football aspect, Davante helps a lot in this game because I think, and I know it wasn't perfect on the Thursday night game, but Gonzalez does a pretty good job against Garrett Wilson. And yes, Garrett got him for the touchdown, but the full sample size, Christian can compete with Garrett Wilson one-on-one, and then you're looking for the Conklins, Lazards, Mike Williams of the world to try to impact the game. Now you get Davante Adams out there. It feels like New England's been a little vulnerable at corners, not named Christian Gonzalez. Are they going to keep that plan and say Gonzalez is going to trail Garrett, or is Gonzalez going to go back and forth between them? That's where Davante can really help in this one, is that it does spread out the field a little bit more. It gives you another reliable number 1 wide receiver. And I think that's how the Jets are going to come out in the first half, looking to attack New England, try to get ahead by throwing the ball, and really split things up between Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, who physically look completely fine against the Steelers. The hamstring injury is not a thing. He's not showing his age. So it's going to be interesting to see if they could really ramp things up in the second week together.
It's amazing. He gets away from Las Vegas. All of a sudden, the hamstring's good. So maybe he's having some of Aaron's ayahuasca. Hey, as someone that you don't just cover the Jets and you do a great job at it, but you grew up a Jets fan, Connor. You've been through the suffering. You've been through the pain. I'm not trying to put salt in the wound.
It's
but
okay.
As you're watching this week unfold and this season unfold in Foxboro from New York, what's going through your mind as you witness Jerod Mayo calling his team soft, walking it back, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick calling him out, and just what it is? I mean, they're off to a 1-6 start, and they look like the worst team in the NFL.
Look at the joy in his face, George. Does that not say it all? He doesn't need to say a thing. Look how happy this guy is.
It's the Twilight Zone. It's number 1, I'll say this. I really liked Drake May a lot in this draft. For my other job, full-time job, which is being a draft analyst, I want the best for Drake May and the best situation for him to develop. And I was very concerned when he was the number 3 overall pick in the draft because I didn't like this offensive line on paper. They have work to do at receiver, but they'll get there. And this coaching staff, it had a lot to prove, but I don't know if it was one that you bought into with excitement. You were kind of just, let's see something from them. Now, the drama that's unfolded here so quickly is interesting because I don't know if people expected New England to be very good this year. Most didn't. The betting market will tell you that nobody did.
Yep.
They were picked to finish last in the AFC East. It's going to be a rebuilding year. They were purposely, I think, protecting Drake May the first couple of weeks of the season to not have him battered behind a poor offensive line. And it's somehow still imploded on Mayo. I guess the comment calling the team soft was not received well by many, probably players in the locker room, but Belichick felt like it was time to defend a lot of players that he was responsible for. And there's a lot of varying opinions on that. I think Belichick did a really bad job with this roster at the end of his tenure. And that's not an unfair insult. Bill Belichick's one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Yes. Right.
The GM, Bill Belichick, at the end could not keep up the head coach of Bill Belichick. And I think that's why it felt a little personal to him that maybe he thought Mayo was saying, this is the roster I was handed. It's going to take us a couple years. Get used to it. We see that in the NFL every year. Guys take over a job. Sean Payton did it to Nathaniel Hackett with an absolute razor blade. Yep. And you know why it's a bad look is because it looks like excuse making. But then when you actually like huddle up on the corner, you're like, he's not wrong. Like, how is he supposed to get, by with that? So I think what concerns me with Mayo, I don't care what he thinks of the roster. I don't care that the team can't win games. It's that they look in over their heads right now, New England, whether it's the game plan, whether it's situational football. And that, to me, like you said, George, growing up a Jets fan, it doesn't even make sense. It's jarring. New England, what you could always guarantee with New England, even when they were at the end of the run with Belichick, is they were going to be ready to play, they were going to be disciplined, and they were going to have a game plan that made sense. And unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of that in the Jerod Mayo era. Now, I think he deserves some time this season to actually turn that around. but it just feels like it's getting really late early right now.
Yeah, it feels like it's getting away from him. The grasp that he has on the locker
Overwhelmed.
room. Yeah, he's in over his head. He's overwhelmed. He's not learning how to talk to the media. We have wide receivers. We're seeing them celebrate touchdowns by telling agents to call them and trade for them. It's left and right. And you're 100% right on the coaching staff. You have Alex Van Pelt, never called plays before, but been an OC. DeMarcus Covington, never been a DC before. And it's at the point where you want to see a head coach be more hands-on with the defense, because the worst part of this all is Drake May, who last time you were on this, Connor, you said it. He was my QB2 coming out of the draft, and you're 100% right, and I love your analysis. Drake May gave this offense another layer to work with. He got them to 21 points.
Yep.
And the defense has gotten worse and worse. That's a worse reflection of a defensive-minded head coach. But you're 1,000% right. He should get the full season. We'll just see how it ends from that point on. Look, Trav, what I tell you about Connor, man, even when he could take the low road and punch down, he's a better man, and he goes full analyst and is a professional when saying how bad the Pats are. Connor, I always appreciate having you on, man.
Listen, there's no victory lapping from a Jets end right now, okay? we're both just sitting here in the mud. It's just a matter of who gets deeper and deeper. But it was great talking to you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Connor.
Connor, always appreciate you taking the time. He's Connor Rogers of SNY. Every Jets game day, catch him on pre and post on SNY. Make sure to follow him on social media. He's one of the best. Connor, till next time, it'll be when, I don't know. Thank God they're done playing each other at this point.
It'll be the draft for both sides.
I love it. We'll have you on for the draft because the Patriots need it, and I'll give you a break talking about this bad team. Connor Rogers of SNY, thanks for taking the time again, man.
That's a good dude right there. I like him.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Connor. Appreciate you, man.
I like that guy.
He's the best.
He is. He said, it's getting late early. I wrote that down, direct quote, with Jerod Mayo in New England, and I wrote down closing time for me. Like the lights are on. They're playing Sweet Caroline at the end of the night because it's over. I've seen enough. It's not going to work. I think Mayo's getting fired, as you know. I believe that.
It is the best argument, Trav, I can give you.
Yeah.
Is that Robert Kraft said he handpicked him 5 years ago. Is that Robert Kraft calls him another son. The Thundercat relationship going back to 2008. And
cringe.
You know what? You know what I'm mad at about myself?
What?
Is that Michael Lombardi, when we had him on top of the show, said, two people that are ultimately judged by on wins and losses is a head coach and GM.
He did say that.
And me not being a great listener at that point, I should have said, so what does that mean for their future? We did ask, can Robert Kraft admit he's wrong? And you know what? This is me thinking out loud. We'll ask him next week.
Sure.
But that's what it comes down to is, if Robert Kraft can admit he was wrong, and if Robert Kraft's going to judge him off wins and losses, neither should be brought back. Well, see, Elliot Wolf's been in the building the last 5 years.
That's right.
But what you bring on, and that's where I want to go to next. We talked about it at the end of the last episode of Rush. I'm going to ask it again.
All right.
What's worse in your eyes? Option A, being wrong about hiring Jerod Mayo this past offseason, or option B, being wrong and keeping Jerod Mayo around too long, having you miss out on the right head coach and possibly spoiling Drake May.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy. It's B. And this is why I'm saying, look, I'm not advocating for anyone to get fired in any field.
Same.
Especially, you got to remember, George, when the guy got hired, I mean, I was doing backflips here at Nesson because it's the first black head coach in Patriots history. That matters. That's a powerful thing. That's a powerful statement. That's a powerful position for Jerod Mayo to be in. I want him to have success. But I've seen enough. And my thing is this. If you hang on to this guy for too long and he doesn't get better, you are screwed. One thing about the NFL I'll give a lot of credit to, and I don't know where this changed. I'm not smart enough to know that, but I've watched it happen over my lifetime, is it used to be, George, back in the day, if you drafted the wrong quarterback, for example, and that guy was a draft bust, right, and it didn't work, you were absolutely decimated for a decade at least. Like you were. It didn't matter what you did, roster, coach. If you got that position wrong, you were absolutely destroyed for 10 years. Now these teams, I mean, it's like moving furniture, brother. You move quarterbacks. I knew when the Cardinals drafted, what was it, Josh Rosen, his first name? I remember his last name was Rosen. I think it was Josh Rosen.
Josh Rosen.
And he was like a top 10 pick.
Out of UCLA.
Stunk. They got rid of him in 5 minutes. And there's a lot of examples of that since then. I feel like that was the first time I at least noticed it. Whereas like these teams now, they move off of quarterbacks. They'll move off of head coaches.
Yeah.
If something's not working, in other words, the NFL teams and the NFL in general, rules we see this with rule changes, they're fast, bro. And so I say all of that to say, if you stick with Jerod Mayo simply because Robert Kraft doesn't want to be wrong, and you hope and wish and pray that Jerod Mayo improves, you could be setting your franchise up for absolute failure for a decade plus because you're going to ruin Drake May. We just watched him ruin another quarterback in this town, in Mac Jones, who's not as talented as Drake May, but they ruined him. He showed promise early.
Yeah.
And you have all these dweebs coming in and coaching offense who have no business doing it. It ruined them, okay?
Yeah.
So if you stick with Jerod Mayo too long and he doesn't improve, I understand. Listen, I also need to preface it this way too, George. If Jerod Mayo this season wins 4 or 5 games and we see an improvement, that's different. All bets are off, okay? Stick with him. And then, you know what, I'll be quiet in the corner. You don't have any problems out of me. But if it's a continuation of what we've seen, bro, you got to get this guy out of here.
Yeah.
Because you can't afford – I don't care about the maturation of these young receivers that are already divas and they haven't done a damn thing. I care about the maturation of Drake May.
Yeah.
I care about having the brain trust in the building to build an offensive line to protect him, which they haven't done.
Yeah.
I care about the brain trust in the building to develop an actual running game for the kid. Get the kid some weapons, right? Get the kid some quality coaching. And look, I just don't think this current regime has enough experience or wherewithal to do any of the above.
Yeah.
So hiring Jerod Mayo, although I think we can all acknowledge was a mistake, and there were other places you could go. Vrabel comes to mind. There was experienced candidates out there. But sticking with him too long, I think, George, is devastating to the Patriots, potentially.
I totally see where you're coming from. I'm going to go with being wrong on hiring him from the jump.
Okay.
Because right now, the Patriots are losing crucial years off a cost control contract from a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I know our listeners and our viewers on Foxboro Rush know damn well what that term means now.
Yep.
Because I drop it every episode.
Yep.
But it's when you have a rookie scale contract and the quarterback is cheap, relatively cheap, right now, and you can fill out the rest of the roster. Look, Drake May's rookie season, the Patriots were going to be bad no matter what. But it's year 2, year 3, especially year 3 when he'd make that jump.
Yep.
And that's right before you're going to have to look at him and say, all right, let's start talking extensions when he's going to get 60, 65 million a year. But you look at quarterbacks from the past, right? Look at what Jared Goff did. Drafted 2016 with 4-12 with Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher fired. In comes Sean McVay. They go wild card, then Super Bowl appearance. Look at Joe Burrow, injured, Super Bowl appearance, AFC Championship game. Those are his first 3 years. Jalen Hurts, first 2 years as a starter, wild card, Super Bowl appearance. Lamar, wild card, division. He's been a pumpkin, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy, NFC Championship game to Super Bowl appearance. Guess what? He's about to get paid.
Yep.
But why I'm pointing this out on why it's bad you got Jerod Mayo wrong from the jump is because now that's a year lost, and then year 2 will be him learning a new system if you move on. Year 2 would be you having to bid with the Eagles and the Cowboys, who are more sexy jobs to land. And look, the Ben Johnsons and the Bobby Slowicks are out there. Ben Johnson wanted $15 million a year.
Yeah.
No one was going to pay him that.
Right.
Dave Canales, who's a quarterback whisperer, saved Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield's career, got those guys paid, got those teams into the playoffs. As a QB coach in OC, he's building something in Carolina. You could have been giving him $3 million a year. From a business standpoint and from a quarterback standpoint, it made sense to look outside. And you know where it is. From the jump, what I said too. I only didn't like the Jerod Mayo hire because you didn't actually explore the best options out there.
Yeah.
You didn't talk to Mike Vrabel.
No.
You didn't talk to Dave Canales.
You didn't
And
even talk to him.
The same thing with your GM. You went lazy, you went simple, and you went Robert Kraft trying to make everything to sunshine and rainbows.
That's right.
So I think the worst is being wrong about Jerod Mayo from the jump. Because you bring in someone new, and you know what I say too, Trav. You bring in a new OC, a new head coach. Takes an offseason to get the old guys out of the way.
Sure it does.
And that's on your GM. And now as you go through it, Josh McDaniels,
Yep.
Matt Patricia,
Yep.
Bill O'Brien, Alex Van Pelt, you could have a fifth different offensive coordinator and play caller
Crazy.
in 5 years.
Bro, I think that's so well said, and I appreciate your recent examples. One that came to my mind of quarterbacks on rookie contracts and being able to fill out the roster, and then once the quarterback got paid, you're not the same. Russell Wilson in Seattle, bro. No one talks about that. Do you remember?
4th round pick?
Russell Wilson, yes. Russell Wilson was getting paid nothing, like minimum wage for quarterbacks in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
A minimum wage equivalent.
Yep.
And they had the Legion of Boom. And they should have had 2 rings. Thank you for not running beast mode.
I'm grateful that they don't.
But still, right?
Yeah.
They win one, they're in another. And then Russell Wilson gets paid. Legion of Boom goes bye-bye. And it was like, let Russ cook for a couple years, and he was putting up numbers, but they weren't winning anything, right? And then we know the rest of the story. So you make a great point about sort of having a window now. Now, certainly the Patriots are not anywhere near a championship window, but to your point of filling out a roster.
3, 4, 5 years.
Right now is the time. That's well said.
Russell Wilson's 2nd year in the league.
Yeah.
They won the Super Bowl. 3rd year in the league. They appeared in the Super Bowl. So there's both sides, but I think we're going to look back and say the worst thing is they hired him from the jump.
Yeah.
And as Connor brings up Mike Vrabel, right? Like, everyone's talking about that name. The best options in Cleveland, you could have had him last year.
I like him.
This year, when jobs open up,
Yeah.
Philly,
Yep.
Dallas,
Yep.
New England,
Yep.
he's not going to want to come to
No,
New England.
he'll be higher on the pecking order in terms of hires than he was last year as well.
And
like
it's
those teams are going to want Vrabel.
And it's been dysfunction.
Yeah.
And these coaches pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And the ones that can have options, that have leverage, like a Ben Johnson, like a Bobby Slowick, like a Mike Vrabel, they're going to go to the best opportunity. They're not going to take just any head coaching job. They're going
That's
to go
right.
to the best opportunity. And New England's not the best opportunity.
Yeah.
They still are in a good spot. Top 3 quarterback, rookie scale contract.
Oh, yeah.
You have a top 3 pick. A lot
Mad
of
money.
cap space.
Mad money to burn.
Man, it's going to be tough, though.
Stefanski.
He's
I'm telling you, Stefanski, you
Hey,
watch.
oh, who
Because
gave
he's
you
not
that
going to have
right?
a.
Who-
You did.
Okay.
But he's not going to have a lot of
Oh, wait,
options.
hold on. Before I let you go, too, by the way.
Yeah.
I gotta fact check you.
All right.
Talking to Connor, you said I picked the Jets, you picked the Steelers. You picked the Jets.
No, that's what I said.
You
Maybe
said
I
the reverse.
misspoke.
We'll roll the tape.
I meant to give you props.
My
You
man.
picked that one.
My
But
man.
you didn't pick a blowout.
No.
You
Did
know?
not see that coming.
Yeah.
He's Travis Thomas. I'm George Balekji. This was Foxboro Rush. Thank you for Michael Lombardi for taking the time. Thank you to Connor Rogers for taking the time. Thank you to you guys, the viewers, the listeners, for taking your time to make us a part of your week. Wherever you get your podcasts, please download, subscribe, rate, and review. And if you go to Nesson's YouTube page, hit the subscribe button. You want prior episodes? Go to the playlist. Go to the podcast.
Come on.
Go to Foxboro Rush. You see us all there. He's Double T. I'm GB. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.